Hi, my name is Owilda Jimenez. I'm a virtual content specialist teacher from PS 386. I'm creating this teacher-facing video in partnership with Maria Friedland from the Division of Multilingual Learners. Our goal is to create social studies content for our multilingual learners and English language learners during remote and blended instruction. This teacher-facing video will focus on the independent practice portion of the Grade 4, Unit 3, Day 13 lesson titled The Battle of Golden Hill. The focus question is what events led to the war with Great Britain? And our lesson objective is to analyze images and text in order to explain the key events of a local battle in the American Revolution. The corresponding Passport to Social Studies workbook pages that will be used in this lesson are from page 145 to 148, and those are the same page numbers if you are using the passport workbook in a different language. Before you teach the lesson, it would be helpful to support our multilingual learners and English language learners in accessing the content by assigning these sources, right? So the Quartering Act of 1765, the Battle of Golden Hill, and where was Lower Manhattan's Golden Street. Now you could choose to just assign either the Battle of Golden Hill or where was Lower Manhattan's Golden Street, but all students should have the Quartering Act of 1765, an understanding of that. So students can be assigned this slide before the day's lesson, our multilingual learners and English language learners, and they can also be given access to the same content in their native language. It helps them because it makes the content comprehensible, and also it prepares them for engaging in discussions with their peers on the day of the actual lesson. So that's a really helpful scaffold for our multilingual learners and English language learners. So for independent work, students will be analyzing the written sources. Students already analyze the images during the introductory portion of the lesson the day before. Students can use this tool, Thinking About Text Template, on page 145 of the Passport to Social Studies workbook, what I read, what I think, and questions I have, to help them organize their notes and their understandings of what they read. Now, each of the sources already comes with an audio version, an audio clip. So that's one scaffold that makes the content more accessible. Students, if our multilingual learners and English language learners are getting the sources a day or two before the actual lesson, I would encourage them to use Sift as a tool to make the content more comprehensible. Students copy and paste the information, and what it does is it highlights words that students should pay attention to and can use during discussions. If there is a correlating or corresponding image that makes the content comprehensible, that will pop up. And what it does is it takes the original content and breaks it down into 3 big ideas or sentences to not only help students understand what the content is about, but these are sentences students can come and use the next day during discussions. So in this example, it says, once the French and Indian War had ended, the king's advisors decided that some British troops should remain in North America, in theory, to defend the colonies. Since the war had left Britain with a large national debt, it also was especially important that the colonies should pay their share of the cost of keeping these men in America. The Quartering Act of 1765 required colonial governments to provide and pay for feeding and sheltering any British troops stationed in their colony. Students can also focus on one of these sentences and use to take notes and ask questions in preparation for the day's lesson. So those are just some ideas on how you can scaffold the Quartering Act the day before, 2 days before the actual lesson. It will be important for all students to understand that the Quartering Acts, not just the acts that they learned from in day's 12th lesson, but the Quartering Act on top of those is making this snowballing effect of events that are leading to growing tensions and the American Revolution. Now, for the independent work, students can be placed in groups to think about all of the sources. Again, not the images, because we already discussed the images during the introduction portion of the lesson. But the Quartering Acts, the Battle of Golden Hill, and then where was Lower Manhattan's Golden Street? Now, another way that you can make the content more accessible is, I took the Quartering Act, for example. You could use Sift to have students understand the big ideas or the main ideas from that source, or you can also highlight, like I did. I highlighted some of the words and phrases that can support students in understanding what the Quartering Act was and the effects of the act. Also, in green and in parentheses, I put in a scaffold where, just to support students in understanding some vocabulary words. I did it for the Quartering Act of 1765, those sources. And then after each source, students can jot down what I read, what I think, questions I have. They can do it on the Google slide if you're working remotely, or again, they can use the tool on page 145. And they can do this for each of the sources. And also they can listen to the source being read out loud to them. Now, it also says for independent work, students can use the 5 W's graphic organizer to summarize what happened, what they learned, not just from the sources, but also from the images. So the questions are: who fought in the battle? Where did the battle take place? When did the battle take place? What happened and why did it happen? You could choose for multilingual learners and English language learners to give this organizer a day before, along with the Quartering Act and maybe one more source. They could prepare a day before. You could also have them work in partnerships to discuss and fill the organizer out. If you're using the workbook, you could fill out the 5 W's organizer and then use this template to sort of take the information from the 5 W's graphic organizer and turn it into a news article, right? Summarizing the who, what, where, when, and why of what you learned. Something that I recommend that's really engaging, especially for our multilingual learners and English language learners, is using Flipgrid. You could set up a topic, a discussion. So we could have the discussion here, the Battle of Golden Hill. And then you can link this to your Google Classroom. Students log on. And then on Shorts here, they can record themselves, almost like broadcasting the news of what happened during the Battle of the Golden Hill using the 5Ws graphic organizer. So if students prefer, they could take notes here to organize their thoughts, but if they don't want to write down their news story, they can use Flipgrid to record the events that happened during the Battle of Golden Hill. So those are just some ways to scaffold and make content more accessible for our multilingual learners and English language learners during the independent work portion of this lesson.